Welcome back. So in our last explainer, we really dug into Hegel's first position of thought, that's naive metaphysics, and we saw how its abstract definitions just couldn't get a grip on reality. Today, we're taking the crucial next step in thought's journey, empiricism, the second position. Let's get into why this turn to experience was such a necessary leap forward, and why, for Hegel, it just couldn't be the final answer.
And really, this question is everything. The first position, with its total reliance on pure thought, just left us drifting, lost in a sea of abstractions. Thought desperately needed to find some firm footing, some solid ground. And empiricism is what rises up to answer that call, proposing a totally new starting point, experience itself.
So, here's our roadmap. We're going to follow Hegel's argument through 5 key stages. We'll start by seeing why empiricism was such a necessary reaction. Then we'll check out the modern principles it champions. From there, we'll uncover the deep contradiction at its heart, use Hegel's famous onion metaphor to pick apart its method, and finally, see how it just has to morph into the next big philosophical position.
Okay, so Hegel doesn't just see empiricism as some random alternative to metaphysics. No, he sees it as a historically necessary reaction. It pops up directly because that first position failed so badly. That old way of thinking was happy to just define reality from an armchair without ever, looking out the window. Empiricism comes along and basically says, yeah, no more of that.
And the difference is just night and day. Where metaphysics looked inward to pure, isolated thought, empiricism looks outward to what's given, to what we can actually see and hear and touch. It completely throws out those empty concepts for rich, perceivable content. It's a demand for a real foundation, something solid.
Now, for Hegel, this turn to the concrete isn't a mistake. Not at all. It's a vital developmental stage. Spirit, and remember, for Hegel, that's kind of like consciousness evolving through history, has to go through this phase. It needs to get its hands dirty, to immerse itself in the details of the world through observation before it can ever hope to understand the deeper universal patterns at work.
And Hegel is actually pretty generous here. He doesn't just dismiss empiricism out of hand. He actually pulls out 2 really profound principles from it that he sees as being at the absolute core of the modern spirit.
So this first principle is a huge rejection of any philosophy that kind of looks down on the real world in favor of some abstract, better world that only exists in your head. It's all about finding truth in the here and now. And Hegel even gets a little cheeky, pointing out that in this one way, his own philosophy is also empirical, because it's only concerned with what is, not with what we think ought to be.
And this brings us to its second great contribution. This is pretty much the battle cry of the Enlightenment, right? Don't just take someone's word for it. See it for yourself, experience it, prove it. For Hegel, this is a massive step forward for human consciousness. It's this demand that our knowledge has to be our own, something we're totally at home in, not something just handed down to us.
So empiricism is all about reality and individual freedom. It sounds pretty great, doesn't it? Well, here's where Hegel pulls a classic Hegel and introduces a brilliant twist. He argues that this philosophy of freedom secretly contains a deeper kind of unfreedom. Let's unpack that. The appeal is obvious. It puts the individual in the driver's seat. It says your experience is the ultimate judge of what's true. You're free from the old dogmas, free from those empty metaphysical definitions. You get to be your own authority. And right here, this is the question that turns the whole thing on its head. If all truth just comes from the given, from the raw data our senses feed us, then what is our role in all this? Are we freely creating knowledge, or are we just a passive recording device?
So here's the knockout punch. By making the given world the absolute source of truth, empiricism just sets up a new master. The subject isn't really free anymore. Now you're just constrained by this external, alien reality. As Hegel sees it, you've gained the freedom to observe the walls of your prison cell in fantastic detail, but you're still locked inside. You just have to accept this absolute other without being able to actively shape it with your own thought.
And this unfreedom, it's never more clear than when you look at the main tool empiricism uses to understand the world, analysis. And to show us its big flaw, Hegel gives us this amazing, unforgettable metaphor. This just paints the perfect picture, doesn't it? We come across a rich, unified thing in the world, an apple, a person, whatever. Empiricism's method is to break it down, to peel it apart layer by layer, just like you'd peel an onion to get to its core.
Okay, so let's walk through it. We start with a whole, living thing. Then the analytical method kicks in and starts separating its qualities. Okay, this part is red, this part is round, this part is sweet. Each quality gets isolated and turned into an abstract universal property. But when you reduce the thing to just a checklist of abstract properties, what's missing?
And there it is, the devastating conclusion. In trying to understand the thing by taking it apart, analysis actually destroys the very unity that made it what it was in the first place. The life, the spark, the essential oneness of the object, it's gone. You're just left with a grocery list of properties, but the thing itself has completely disappeared.
And this right here is the core philosophical mistake Hegel is going after. Empiricism treats the world like it's just a big pile of disconnected bits, sense data, properties, that we happen to bundle together. It totally misses the irreducible wholeness that Hegel thinks is fundamental to reality. And the so what here is huge. This isn't just some dusty philosophical debate. It's a warning against any kind of thinking that believes you can understand a complex whole, whether it's an economy, an ecosystem, or a person, by just adding up its separate parts.
But the story doesn't stop there. Hegel shows that empiricism, when you look at what it actually does, can't even stick to its own rules. It gets tangled up in a contradiction that forces thought to move on. It becomes, totally against its will, a kind of metaphysician.
Officially, the empiricist position is super clear. If you can't see it, hear it, or touch it, you can't know it. Any talk of super-sensible things, stuff beyond experience, like God or abstract forms, is just meaningless chatter.
But here's the great irony. Just look at what science, the crown jewel of empiricism, actually does. It doesn't just collect individual facts. It's always looking for universals, species to classify living things, and most importantly, physical laws to explain how things work. And here is the fatal flaw. You can't see gravity. You see a ball fall. The law itself is a universal concept, a thought. As Hegel brilliantly puts it, the laws of the heavens aren't written on the sky. They exist only for the mind. So empiricism is forced to use these non-sensory, universal thoughts to make sense of a world it claims we can only know through sensory particulars. It's a massive contradiction.
So, empiricism is basically torn apart by a problem it can't solve using its own toolkit. And this exact problem, how the universal concepts inside our heads relate to the particular data coming from our senses, well, that becomes the central question that kicks off the third great position of thought, Kant's critical philosophy.
This is the incredible dilemma that empiricism leaves us with. It's a puzzle it just can't solve on its own. And it's a question that sets the stage perfectly for our next explainer, where we're going to see how Immanuel Kant tries to build a whole new foundation for knowledge to answer this very challenge.